Beijing's sky thundered with the roar of engines as columns of soldiers marched in perfect step, their boots striking the pavement like drums of power. Behind them came the spectacle that froze the world: massive launchers carrying sleek hypersonic glide vehicles, intercontinental ballistic missiles towering over the crowds, and swarms of strike drones flying overhead in a chilling display of technology. Cameras captured every detail: the sharp angles of stealth designs, the gleam of new warheads, the symbols of a nation declaring that its time had come. This was no ordinary parade. It was a warning. The message from China was unmistakable. It now possesses the weapons to reach any point on the globe, to overwhelm defenses once thought impenetrable, and to change the balance of power in a single strike. Analysts whispered about Mach 10 speeds, warheads that split into multiple targets, and drones capable of hunting in coordinated packs guided by artificial intelligence. For decades, these were theories. Now they rolled down the streets of Beijing for the entire world to see. But what made the spectacle even more unsettling was the shadow behind it. Russia, locked in a grinding war and desperate for advanced weapons, is watching closely. Its own missile stockpiles are running low, its drone program lags behind, and its leaders openly speak of a new strategic partnership with Beijing. Could the systems unveiled in China's parade, those sleek strike drones and unstoppable hypersonics, one day fly under Russian colors over Ukraine or Europe? The thought chills military planners in Washington, Brussels, and Tokyo. A world already fractured by war and rivalry could be pushed to the brink if Moscow were to gain access to Beijing's newest toys of destruction. The Red Square and Tiananmen Square might not just be symbols of two powers rising. They could become twin arsenals feeding each other, united against the West. Where are you watching this from right now? Tell us, because what was revealed on the streets of Beijing today may not just be a show of pride. It may be the glimpse of a future where wars unfold faster, deadlier, and with weapons that no one can stop. The parade unfolded with a precision that felt less like celebration and more like choreography for intimidation. First came the rumble of massive transporter erector launchers, each carrying an intercontinental ballistic missile longer than a city bus, their warheads hidden beneath armored cones. Painted in camouflage, they towered over the crowd as they rolled past the grandstands, a reminder that Beijing could now strike anywhere in the world, from Washington to London to Tokyo, with a single turn of a key. Then came the hypersonics. Sleek, almost alien in design, the glide vehicles were mounted on launch trucks, their sharp angles glinting in the sun. Unlike traditional ballistic missiles, these weapons are built to fly at speeds beyond Mach 10, dipping low into the atmosphere and maneuvering unpredictably, rendering missile defense systems nearly useless. For decades, the United States poured billions into layered shields designed to intercept ballistic arcs. What rolled through Tiananmen Square that day was the answer: weapons that could twist, dive, and strike before radars even finished tracking them. Overhead, the sound of engines shifted as swarms of drones swept into view. Some were long-range strike drones, capable of carrying heavy payloads for thousands of kilometers. Others were smaller, stealthier, built to hunt as a pack, guided by artificial intelligence. The announcers spoke proudly of their ability to overwhelm enemy defenses through sheer numbers, waves of machines operating with machine precision, designed to exhaust any system that tried to stop them. The symbolism was unmistakable. China was not just displaying weapons, it was displaying doctrine. A future war would not be won with a few precise strikes, but with overwhelming waves of unstoppable systems, missiles too fast to intercept, drones too numerous to track, nuclear warheads too many to counter. For the millions watching on television, it was a show of pride. For military analysts abroad, it was a warning written in steel and fire. The camera cut to the faces of Chinese leaders standing atop the viewing platform, their expressions calm, confident, unyielding. Every system that passed was another signal, not just to their people, but to the world. China had joined the front rank of global military powers, and perhaps more ominously, it was willing to show that strength openly. In the crowd, cheers thundered. But far beyond Beijing, in the halls of Washington, Brussels, and Moscow, the mood was darker. Because these weapons were not built for parades, they were built for the future of war. For decades, hypersonic flight was the holy grail of weapons development, something scientists dreamed of, engineers struggled to design, and generals warned could rewrite the very rules of war. The United States invested billions in experimental programs, testing prototypes that often ended in fiery crashes. Russia boasted of its Kinzhal and avant-garde systems, though questions lingered about their true performance and limited numbers. But China? China quietly poured resources into laboratories, wind tunnels, and production lines, until suddenly it wasn't behind. It was ahead. The hypersonic glide vehicles shown in Beijing are not theoretical prototypes. They are operational, mounted on launch trucks, and paraded openly before the world. Capable of traveling at speeds above Mach 10, maneuvering in the atmosphere, and evading every known missile defense system, these weapons represent a nightmare scenario for defenders. Unlike a traditional ballistic missile, which arcs predictably through space, a hypersonic vehicle can dip low, weave side to side, and change course in mid-flight. By the time radar locks on, it may already be seconds from impact. For Washington, this is alarming. America's vast missile shield, Patriot systems in Europe, THAAD in Asia, Aegis interceptors at sea, was designed to stop ballistic arcs. None of it was built to stop a weapon that can glide unpredictably at thousands of miles per hour. Pentagon reports have quietly admitted that the U.S. currently has no reliable defense against a large-scale hypersonic attack. For Moscow, the story is different, but no less troubling. Russia claims to field hypersonics, but production bottlenecks and costs limit their numbers. The war in Ukraine has drained stockpiles of conventional precision weapons, leaving the Kremlin eager for anything that can restore the aura of technological superiority. Watching Beijing roll out squadrons of hypersonics, systems that look polished, mass-producible, and combat-ready, must sting. It raises a question that sends shivers through European capitals. What if Russia one day acquires access to these designs? China's edge comes from more than technology. It comes from speed. Factories have been scaled up to mass-produce drones, missiles, and advanced electronics at a rate neither Washington nor Moscow can match. The West builds prototypes. Russia builds in small batches. China builds by the thousands. And when hypersonic missiles are no longer scarce but plentiful, the balance of power shifts completely. That is why the parade in Beijing was not just about showing strength. It was about showing confidence. Confidence that China has seized the lead in the race for the weapons of the future, and that the rest of the world must now decide how to respond. For Moscow, the temptation is obvious. After more than 2 years of brutal fighting in Ukraine, Russia's once vaunted missile arsenal has been drained to dangerous levels. Factories in the Urals struggle to keep pace with the demands of daily strikes, and the Kremlin has been forced to lean heavily on Iranian Shahed drones, cheap, slow, and increasingly easy for Ukraine to intercept. The great military power that once prided itself on innovation now relies on imported technology from Tehran. China's drones and hypersonics represent something entirely different. The strike drones showcased in Beijing are sleek, fast, and long-range, machines that can carry heavy payloads across continents, equipped with stealth features and guided by advanced AI. For Russia, access to such systems could transform the battlefield overnight. Instead of swarms of slow shaheds, Moscow could unleash high-speed, precision drones capable of overwhelming Ukrainian defenses and striking deep into NATO territory if the war were to escalate further. The hypersonics are an even bigger prize. Russia has its own designs, the Kinzhal and Avangard, but production is limited, and the war has exposed flaws. Chinese systems, however, appear to be entering mass production. If Moscow could obtain even a fraction of these weapons, or the designs to manufacture them, it would regain the ability to terrify Europe and deter the West. Suddenly, cities from Warsaw to Berlin would face the threat of missiles that cannot be intercepted. For Beijing, the question is more complex. Openly transferring such weapons to Russia would risk enormous backlash, crippling sanctions, diplomatic isolation, perhaps even a unified Western response that China cannot afford. Yet covert support is harder to trace. Already, Western intelligence agencies report Chinese dual-use components flowing quietly into Russia: microchips, optics, machine tools. The leap from selling parts to sharing whole systems may not be as large as officials hope. The whispers in diplomatic circles are growing louder. Would Beijing dare? Would it hand Moscow the drones and missiles that could tilt the war in Ukraine, and in doing so, tilt the global balance of power? Or would it keep these weapons for its own arsenal, waiting for a future showdown in the Pacific? For the West, the possibility alone is enough to set off alarms. Because if Russia and China were to merge their arsenals, Kremlin ruthlessness combined with Beijing's industrial might, the world would be facing not two separate rivals, but a single, unified threat, with weapons designed to outrun, outlast, and overwhelm everything America and its allies have built to defend themselves. In Washington, the reaction to Beijing's parade was one of open alarm. Intelligence briefings circulated across the Pentagon, each page stamped with red warnings. China was not just flexing for domestic pride, it was sending a message to the world. Analysts underlined one chilling possibility. If Russia were to gain even partial access to these systems, the entire strategic balance in Europe could collapse. The president's advisors debated responses. Should America accelerate its own hypersonic programs, expand missile defense networks in Europe and Asia, or move to sanction China more aggressively? Every option carried costs. Every delay carried risks. In Brussels, the atmosphere was equally tense. European leaders, already grappling with the strain of supporting Ukraine, saw Beijing's display as a warning shot aimed at them too. Hypersonics that could fly from Asia to Europe in minutes. Strike drones that could saturate defenses from the Baltic to the Black Sea. If Russia gets these weapons, one EU official admitted, the security map of Europe changes overnight. Calls grew louder for more joint European defense spending, for urgent deployment of new radars and interceptors. Yet, the uncomfortable truth hung in the air. No system currently fielded in Europe can reliably stop what Beijing rolled down its streets. In Tokyo and Seoul, the mood was almost frantic. China's growing arsenal was aimed not just at deterring the United States, but at pressuring Asia directly. Japanese defense planners pointed to Okinawa and Guam, now potentially vulnerable to unstoppable hypersonic salvos. South Korea, already facing the daily menace of North Korea's missiles, now had to weigh the prospect of Chinese systems appearing in Russian hands, systems that could one day be stationed within striking range of the Korean peninsula. Both nations urged Washington to commit more forces, more interceptors, more guarantees. Meanwhile, Moscow's state media celebrated the parade with unusual enthusiasm. Commentators praised the strategic partnership with Beijing, hinting that Russia and China were united against Western encirclement. Officials avoided specifics, but the implication was clear. Moscow wanted the world to believe that Chinese technology might soon be at its disposal. Whether or not Beijing would ever deliver, the psychological effect was already powerful. For Ukraine and NATO, the possibility alone was enough to force new calculations. Even in regions far removed from the conflict, alarm bells rang. In the Middle East, leaders feared that a Russia-China arms pipeline could destabilize the Gulf, empower Iran, and push oil markets into chaos. In India, strategists watched uneasily, realizing that Beijing's hypersonics threatened not just the Pacific, but New Delhi itself. Across Africa and Latin America, governments saw a world sliding deeper into great power rivalry, with smaller nations trapped between giants arming for confrontation. The global message was unmistakable. Beijing's parade was not a show of pageantry. It was a declaration. The future of warfare had arrived, and the question was not just how China would use it, but whether Russia might use it too. The echoes of the parade still hang heavy in the air. The roar of engines, the gleam of hypersonic missiles, the shadows of drones circling above Beijing's skyline. It was more than a celebration of power. It was a glimpse into a future where wars may be decided in minutes, not months. China showed the world not just weapons, but confidence, a willingness to reveal the tools it believes can redefine the balance of power. Yet behind the spectacle lies the darker question. Russia, drained and desperate, stares at these systems with hungry eyes. Its war machine has been battered in Ukraine, its missile stockpiles depleted, its reliance on Iranian drones a sign of weakness. What happens if Moscow gains access to Beijing's newest creations? What if the hypersonics that rolled through Tiananmen Square one day roll across the skies of Europe under Russian command? The thought alone sends shivers through Washington, Brussels, and Tokyo. Because if that day comes, the West won't face one rival, but two, united by weapons that outrun defenses and overwhelm strategies. The partnership of steel and fire would redraw every line of global security. The parade may be over, but the warning it carried will not fade. The world has seen China's future. The only question that remains is whether Russia will share in it. What do you think? Will Beijing keep these weapons for itself? Or are we on the edge of a new alliance where Moscow wields China's most dangerous technology?